Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Damar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechphilly.com. We have a very, very special guest. I should say guest because we're old friends already. Sure. Assemblyman Steve McLaughlin. Steve, welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome
View.
back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. That is my third time, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Okay, well, that's good.
It'll be the Jewish-Irish View pretty soon.
United Nations. Listen, like it's the end of school, so therefore everybody gets a report card. So the assembly also has to have a report card, but you're part of the assembly, so we're not looking out from it, but inside. What's your take of how everything went this year?
Well, I'd say, B to B minus, maybe a C plus type of. It depends on the perspective that you're looking at it from, and in some areas incomplete. And there are some areas an F, so it's across the board. There are some things we got done. I don't think it
doesn't sound good over here.
It wasn't an A.
Flunking.
No, it wasn't an A. I think it was a.
But a B minus coming from you is pretty special.
Well, I'm being generous. Let's say. There was a lot that we did not get done, which we should have. Some glaring omissions. 9 of the 10 points of the Women's Equality Agenda, for example, were left undone. That was a tragedy, I think, in my opinion, and a huge mistake. But we did get some things done on, for example, heroin, the scourge and the epidemic that we're facing with heroin. But did we get enough done on that front?
What did they do with heroin? Just
well,
explain it a little
we
bit.
passed a series of bills, 8 or 9, I think it was 9 total. And they do, one good thing is you're going to have insurance companies paying for treatment. You want to help the folks that are addicted. You want to try to help them as much as you can because God forbid, they overdose and pass away. So that was a good thing to have the insurance companies treat. But what we didn't get done is something that and there's some other things in there as well, as far as stricter penalties for those who would sell it, but not the dealer level. We made stricter penalties for like doctors that are abusing opioids and selling them. But that is such a very rare circumstance. One of the things I wanted to see done, and we didn't get done, although we should, is extremely severe penalties for those who would deal this poison to our people, to our citizens. That's something that we should have gotten done and didn't. So in that regard, I'd say, we failed. We didn't get done.
Vote for all the bills?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Because half a loaf is better than none.
Yeah, well, you can only vote on what's there, right?
But I understand. But you wanted it stronger, but you didn't have a protest vote against it by saying.
No, because there was nothing there that I disagreed with.
Okay.
But there was some stuff not there that should have been there. I mean, I would say, listen, if it was up to me, you sell heroin, I'll give you 25 years hard labor in the Antarctic, and then we'll see if you want to sell heroin at the end of that 25 years of shoveling snow and ice or whatever. I think it should be severe penalties for those who would deal this because we're dealing with an epidemic that is getting out of control rapidly. So.
And medical marijuana came to fruition where you can control how much medical marijuana is used and to whom it's used. So it was like a drug year.
It was.
It's like drug is the theme here.
And shocking to some people, I voted for the medical marijuana bill this year. It's the first time I ever have, because in years past, the bill was so permissive and so wide open. I mean, you could say, well, geez, I have a hangnail. Well, here's some marijuana. Or my elbow hurts, here's some marijuana. We tightened that up enough this time where we limited where it can go. I don't care too much about the smoking versus non-smoking part of it. To me, if somebody's going to get it, they're probably going to smoke it, I would say. But it's very difficult for me as a legislator when you have children in a wheelchair that are epileptic out in the hallway and their parents are pleading with you to do something.
And one of the girls had a seizure right there.
Absolutely.
On the floor,
yeah, and it's heartbreaking. And if that marijuana oil is going to help that child, which hopefully it will, then you have to take a hard look at that. It's very hard to say no. Previously, I almost had to say no because the bill was so wide open, but I think it was tightened up enough this time that I voted yes for it. Some people aren't going to be happy with that, but I thought I was doing the right thing. And also, I thought I was listening to my constituents because if you look across the state, it is popular, among the people of New York. So, but that being said, I think a lot of times the citizens don't read the bill the
Right.
way we do.
Sure.
They hear the title of the bill and think, yes, I'm in favor of that. But I always tell people I have to vote on what's inside the bill, not just the title of the bill. But there was enough this time that it was restrictive enough, and it was a start that I think we can, proceed with caution, but proceed.
And it takes it out of the gateway drug issue.
I hope so.
Okay.
It is interesting though that
But you've never smoked.
No.
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 You've never in college, no.
straight-laced guy the whole way through. But I was flying airplanes all through college, and I
Okay.
was.
All right, just want to double check.
I certainly had a lot of fun in college, but I was not doing
Okay.
any drugs. That's for sure.
Okay.
I was an athlete and I was busy. And,
I'm just joking.
But I will admit to having a few beers in college for sure. But
You're entitled.
But it was a very difficult bill in years past. It was not as difficult this time to vote on it. So we did, and hopefully we do the right thing.
Assemblyman Katz, who's the only physician, any physician in the medical field, even though he's a veterinarian, he spoke to us in favor, in glowing terms, about the impacts of medical marijuana. And, he gave such a compelling argument here. I don't know what he said on the floor of the assembly, but if he said anything. But he said that the governor's office never consulted him, the speaker's office didn't consult him. You would think that this would go beyond party lines,
Yeah.
and that you would want the only expert in the field, anyone who has that type of knowledge, to be part of the discussion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Steve did speak very passionately in conference with us as
Right.
Republican members, and then he did speak on the floor. Now, Steve would tell you we didn't do enough. Steve would tell you that this taking away the smoking aspect of it is ludicrous. So everybody has their own opinions on it, but Steve has studied this issue, I
Yes.
think, more than anybody in the building. And I think that that's an area that he should have been listened to on for sure, among many others that he should be listened to on. But and certainly you want to reach out to those that have studied the issue and see what's going on. But
Now,
that didn't happen. But
Besides the Women's Equality Act, and that you were really passionate about, you were at the $1 Million Staircase, standing up there saying that we need to pass
9 of the 10.
9 of the 10. You're not in favor of the abortion plank, or what is it?
Well, the way I view it is the 10th plank is always going to be exceptionally controversial because it deals with abortion. So that being said, the way I view this is that it expands abortion right up to the moment of birth. That's a bill. That's another one of those things where the public hears women's equality and they're in favor of it.
Right.
But when you break that bill down and you say, do you support late-term abortion? They do not. Overwhelmingly, they do not support late-term abortion. Even the pro-choice crowd is very much opposed to late-term abortion in that last trimester. So that's something that I'm never going to vote for. But that being said, why would you say no to 9 of the 10 when you could have done a lot protecting women and young children from this sex trafficking that's going on just today?
Because Planned Parenthood has a real stranglehold on the Assembly Democrats, maybe?
A huge role is that. And in fact, the Assembly Democrat women said, we want all 10, but if we're not going to pass the 9, we don't want to pass all 9 without passing the 10th, because we want to have it as a political weapon for the fall. That is so callous that it's beyond belief to me. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from another Assembly member who is a woman who was there, a Democrat that was in that conference. She was the one saying that they're saying they want it as a political tool throughout the fall. That's absolutely outrageous. If my son comes home with 9 out of 10 on a test, I'd be pretty happy getting 90% all the time. As I've said, if you believe in that 10th point so much, put it up by itself as a standalone bill and see if it will pass. The fact is they know that it won't pass, so they don't want it. They won't pass in the Senate, that's for sure.
Right, but in the Assembly it'll pass.
Without question it would, but they know it's dead on arrival in the Senate. But if you believed in it so much, wouldn't you clearly you should, from their side of things, they must believe in all 10. But if you can't get all 10, are you really that unyielding that you won't take 9 and protect women from sex trafficking and all this other problems that we're trying to prevent? There is next year, and this battle's going to continue.
And there's no statewide election next year.
That's true.
So it might be a more peaceful way to do it.
It may be, depending on who's in charge of the Senate as well. But
Right.
But people say, well, geez, if the Democrats are in charge, they'll just pass it. I don't know that that's true, because a few years ago the Democrats were in charge and they didn't pass.
But now you have 2 enrolled Democrats who are not in lockstep with the other. Simcha Felder sits with the Republicans.
Yep.
Ruben Diaz is a real staunch conservative Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
more conservative than a Democrat.
Yep.
And but you probably have everyone else, but you need those two, along with the independent Democrats. Plus, you have the open seat, which will be filled after November.
Right.
So you don't have enough votes now.
There's a lot to be determined
Right.
in November, so we'll see.
You're gonna, and then you also have and a Republican seat that's open on Long Island, which will be filled. So
Right.
the Senate's a coin toss, and it's you can wait it this long. Maybe you could wait another.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I just
But you're
think,
right about the political football thing.
yeah, it is absolutely a political football, but to me, listen to the people, listen to the will of the people. The people will tell you they don't support late-term abortion. Even in a solidly pro-choice state like New York, they don't support it. So, and I don't know how you can, quite frankly. I mean, the 7th, 8th, and 9th month, and they will say, well, we're just codifying federal law. Well, if that's the case, if all we're doing is codifying federal law, we're not, by the way, we're expanding on it, but if they're correct and we're just codifying federal law, then why do you have to stand your ground so much and insist that the 10th be passed now if it's already, in fact, federal law? Pass the 9, as I said, stop wasting time, pass the 9, and let's move on, and we'll fight about the 10th later.
Rabbi Simon, is there anything in Jewish law about this?
Well, Jewish law is fairly clear about it, and it's sometimes difficult. The bottom line is that an aborted fetus is a human being in a certain senses. I mean, they're not alive, but you don't abort a fetus only on one condition, and that's different than the Catholic Church, that if the mother is in jeopardy of her life, then the mother comes before the child, because the mother is surely a viable human being. The mother, she's a woman, and the baby, you don't know for sure if it'll come out right. So therefore, then you always, it's the mother over the child. It's still not 100%. I mean, I don't want to give the idea away that it's allowed, but every case has to be gone to I am a rabbi, and there's obviously many rabbis, but they usually go to head rabbis, where maybe that the woman would be mentally unfit. I mean, sometimes, especially in Orthodox Judaism, people have a lot of children, and it's poverty-stricken, and some people just can't mentally cope with it. But that's you can't give a blanket statement, because that's got to be individualized. So in very few cases, but it can happen. But usually, children are a blessing. That's what the bottom line is, and it's not something to get rid of, or it's a pain in the neck, and it's economically can't handle it.
Yep.
This is the best thing we have, the best commodity. It's not the agriculture, it's not the tourism, New York State, it's the children, and just to get rid of children and kill fetuses is just it's not nothing to do with Judaism, really. It's just human life.
Right.
And the Rebbe said, the head Lubavitcher Rebbe, we're dealing with life. What does it make a difference if you're Jewish or you're not Jewish?
So there's
life is the most beautiful thing in the world.
So even early stage pregnancy, if there's a problem, there's still.
I know it's a difficult
No,
issue.
I'm just
I know.
asking,
Well, the problem, what do you mean, like if they know the kid
First-
has Down syndrome?
No, first 3 months. I mean, if.
That really has nothing to do with anything
Okay.
the 9 months. I'm thinking, like I say, it's a complicated issue. That's why I said, on one hand, we can give a basic answer, but nowadays they ultrasound and
there's also.
they test and they kind of, not sometimes
They
do
know if
there's
there's gonna be
problems. Yeah, and even then,
problems,
it's just not an
And
issue.
you said that so perfectly, because part of the consternation with the bill, for those of us that oppose that 10th point, is that it's not only the life of the mother, but it's the health of the mother. And the supporters of the bill can't really define for you what health means. And you mentioned it, you lost your job. Well, that would be allowable under this bill, that you would terminate that pregnancy in the 9th month. It's so open-ended. They don't define what that means. So that is very troubling to us that oppose it. So and actually, I can't, obviously none of us are women, we can't speak for women, but there's a lot of women I know that are pregnant that would say, I'm going to have that baby, even if it means it costs me my life. But again, that is that woman's choice at that point.
Yes.
But it is a very tough bill. It's tough for me. I mean, my niece just yesterday brought her baby home from the hospital. That baby was born at 25 weeks, I believe, extremely premature little girl, about a pound, a little more than a pound, like a stick of butter, But now she's 5 pounds, and she's doing well just a few months later, and she just came home. So you think about that and you say, that's a baby. At 25 weeks, that was a fully viable baby. And she had a rough pregnancy and delivered very, very early, but the baby's thriving. That baby's doing
Smooth
well.
as
Albany Med worked their magic, and now that she's a little chubby thing at 5 pounds. Even though that's extremely tiny, she looks very chubby from where she started. So it's a tough bill, obviously, but I continue to say, let's pass the 9, and we'll fight about the 10th later on, because you're never really going to fully satisfy everybody, but I think we can certainly pass the 9 and make some positive steps for those women that are dealt a rough deal on the sex trafficking issue. We need to protect them.
So let me ask you about your bills, because you had about 20 bills that you sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They were all left in committee.
A few got through.
Who?
Well, my
What?
local bills got through.
Like what?
Well, we had small
Like
bills.
Hoosick Valley, something about
Yeah,
Hoosick Valley?
Yeah, they weren't anything huge. Like most members, they don't get through the big bills.
Well, you have like one that authorizes the study of animal life in the vicinity of the Dewey Lowell hazardous waste site.
Yeah,
Isn't that a local bill?
that's a local bill.
And that's held up in the ENCON committee.
Every year. And that was held up when my predecessor was in office.
Yeah.
They just simply won't pass that bill. And what's happening there is that's a landfill, by the way, right across the river, twice the pollution of Love Canal.
Right.
Really? Is
Yeah.
that- I didn't know.
It is
Oh, yeah.
horrendously bad over there. That's passing the buck between New York State EPA and the federal government. That's what's going on. One says, well, the other one's going to do it, and they're just passing the buck back and forth. It's very frustrating, that particular bill.
And you have a bill that relates to the unlawful discriminatory practices because of familial status.
Well, that is one
And
of
there's
the.
but you have no Senate sponsor for it.
That is actually one of the 9 planks of the women's equality agenda. What we did is we broke it apart, all 9, and each one member of the assembly sponsored those, saying, let's put all 9 up for a vote, and that was one of the 9, and they didn't choose to do it.
So why is it held in government operations instead of health committee?
That I couldn't say. That's where they sent it to die, and unfortunately it did.
All right. Now you had one that relates to establishing a state operating fund spending cap.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the cap? How much?
Well, it would be to be determined type of thing as we worked our way through it. But what I've been saying all along is that just like households have to cap what they spend, so should the state. And we've spent quite a lot of money the past couple of years. We've kept spending under control to some extent, but I think that we can do more on that regard, and we can absolutely do more on mandate relief as well.
Well, you are going to have to find another Senate sponsor because the one you had is retiring.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Senator
right.
Greg Ball.
Yep.
And this was held in Ways and Means Committee.
Yep, it's very difficult. It's difficult, certainly, we all know, as a minority member to get bills through that are statewide bills. It's almost impossible. And the Republicans do that to the Democrats on the Senate side, and the
Yeah.
Democrats do to the Republicans on the Assembly side.
But on the Senate side, there's a way to call a bill out of a committee and get it to the floor for a vote.
Well, yes, we can't do that in
Right.
the Assembly. We can 99 it and make sure that they at least consider it in committee. But if they're going to kill
Right.
the bill, they'll just
Kill the
kill
bill.
it in committee.
Now, what I noticed is that most of your bills are held up in like Real Property Tax Committee, Ways and Means, Government Operations, Transportation, and Economic Development Committee. And the only one that you're on of those is the Economic Development Committee.
That's true.
You have Children and Families, Education, Small Business, Tourism, Parks, and Sports Development.
Right.
So shouldn't you be if you have bills that are more geared towards these other committees, shouldn't you be aligning yourself with sitting on those committees if that's where your focus is going to be in terms of bills and
Well,
what you want to sponsor?
To some extent, but I think that hopefully we're talented enough to handle other bills that are not specific to our committees. And
No,
truthfully,
but you also don't have a say at the table when it goes into the committee because you're not there at the committee meeting because you're at some other committee meeting.
True, but if that was the case, if I had a bill that I was trying to get through a committee that I'm not on, I would certainly go to that committee and make my case. Many members do that all the time, so
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a deal breaker.
Well,
However,
except for the fact you can make a deal with another member of the committee because you're involved in all the issues of that committee, and it kind of makes it a more homey type of situation.
yeah, I think it does, but as you know, the amount of time that you
Playing the
spend
game.
in the building,
Yeah.
a lot of times what we'll do is take our bill. I've had many bills passed that I was not the prime sponsor on, but they were certainly my bill, and we give them
Right.
up to a majority member. Same thing happens over on the Senate side. And then, you would hope that they at least put you on as the prime co-sponsor of the bill. In my approach to things is I'm going to do what I think needs to be done and fight that fight and continue to bang that drum and try to get these bills through. But even the majority members, Harvey Wiesenberg, who's a phenomenal member, and we're going to miss Harvey. He's retiring, sadly, but I understand why he's retiring.
Well, he's 80-something, 80 years old.
Yeah, but he's great. I mean, and he's just sharp as can be.
Oh, he is.
I think
No
the oldest
doubt.
lifeguard in New York State. But it's time for Harvey to step back and
Yeah.
smell the roses a little
Right,
bit. But that being said, we will miss Harvey greatly. There's an example of a bill that Harvey and I worked on that bill together, the CPR training in schools for kids, where we're going to train every high school kid on chest-only CPR
And
compressions.
that got passed.
We got it passed, and that's a wonderful thing and a great tribute to Harvey. And I was right beside him on that bill. If you looked at the bill up on the screen, it was Harvey and I were right beside each other there. I advocated for that bill. Harvey advocated for that bill. Not just us. There were many
No, but
others.
did it get past the Senate?
It did, I believe. I got to double
and it's
check
going
that.
to the governor.
Yes, I'm
Okay,
pretty.
eventually.
Yes, I'm pretty certain it did, and there's no reason not to pass it because it's one class period for high school kids, juniors or seniors, and we can train them in chest-only compressions, and it really costs nothing. It's some DVDs, and now they have these blow-up mannequins with you hear a click when you press the right amount of pressure, so you get feedback on how much pressure to use. So that's a great bill. So there's a lot of those things that we get done. Hopefully that'll save some lives. But that's just the way it is. But the point I was making was Harvey will tell you that even as a longtime member of the majority, he has difficulty getting his bills through because of the stranglehold that Sheldon Silver has on the chamber. It's just the way it is down there.
Let me ask you, you mentioned about CPR. There was an assemblywoman, Annette Robinson from Brooklyn, who had a choking incident actually right on the floor of the assembly.
Right.
And I heard that there was one member who went over.
This is recently?
Yeah, this
Just
past
a
session,
few weeks ago.
I didn't know
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one member, I think from the Republican side, who went over to try to help her. And then when that didn't work, there was someone who happened to be an employee who ran in and was CPR certified and did get it dislodged from her throat and basically saved her life.
Right.
I would think Aileen Gunther, Harvey Wiesenberg, a few others would know how Aileen's a nurse by
Maybe they weren't
profession.
there? Were they there?
I don't know.
Yes, yeah. What happened there
What
was, yes, she did begin to choke, and that happened so quickly. And the chamber is busy. There's a lot of commotion at different times, but clearly there was something going on pretty rapidly. Aileen, to her credit, was right up there.
She was.
She was.
Okay.
It was Sean Ryan who was sitting right beside her.
Who's a Democrat.
A Democrat
Oh,
out of Buffalo. Sean was right there on the scene, attempting to help. But then somebody. I'm not exactly sure how close in proximity they were, but they were there very quickly and did the Heimlich.
But this is why the CPR training is so important.
Absolutely.
To go back to the bill that you were talking about, I'm not just veering and digressing. It really does relate. I
Yep.
mean, here's a real life circumstance.
Without question. And the same exact scenario, very similar scenario, happened right in my district with a kid named Ben Bailey up in Lansingburg High last year. Ben saved his teacher's life. She choked on a hard candy. She went down. She was turning blue. Ben knew what to do because, to their credit, Lansingburg was already doing this chest-only CPR compression training. They were doing it because we had been pushing and pushing and pushing, and a lot of our schools have picked up on it and said, yes, we'll do that. Ben saved his teacher's life. So
I hope he got an A.
I sure hope so. Ben, I tell you, Ben gets beyond A's anyway. I know Ben very well.
Okay.
He's a straight A student, but he certainly would have deserved one for that. But it's a wonderful thing, and I've seen throughout the district a couple of young moms that had sudden cardiac arrest that are otherwise healthy young women. They had young children at home. Down and out they went, and they would have passed away if somebody wasn't right there on the scene, and both of those women were safe. So they've been big advocates for this as well. So it's a rewarding thing when you can get something like that done. And a lot of times, our role, in some regards, you say, boy, New York has enough legislation. We don't need too much more.
Right.
So my focus is more on supporting good legislation, advocating for what I need to do for my district, but also for the state.
So you mentioned too much legislation. That brings to mind this bill that Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal sponsored about about some cubs, lion cubs, and petting lion cubs or
Yeah.
holding lion cubs. And
Mhm.
can you tell us about this? Because it's been part of the comedy routines, nighttime comedy.
Yeah,
routines, so.
to me, it's another kind of feel-good nanny state type bill
Well, what
here in
is
New
it?
York
What-
State. It had to do with people, I guess, mostly in New York City. People breed lion cubs or tiger cubs, and then they take pictures with them, for tourists type of thing. And Linda's trying to outlaw that. And Linda, of course, is all things animals all the time. That's her passion. I understand that. I think she's wrong on a lot of her issues, carriage horses among them. Banning carriage horses in New York City, I don't think that's necessary. But in this case, she felt like she wanted to get this done. I don't recall if there's a Senate sponsor on that bill or not. And it's certainly a bill that I did not get up and debate, even though I easily could have, because I remember well a month or two ago the yogurt debate in the
Yes.
Senate and how it went on for 45 minutes or an hour and how that became really the laughingstock of the country.
And the Assembly event passed the yogurt as the official state snack.
We did, without any debate. We were very well aware of what had gone on in the Senate, so we did not have a big debate. And actually, I'm not sure if you were in the chamber that day, Mark, but that was an interesting day because we had the school kids who had written the paper on it to sponsor the bill and get the ball rolling. They were up in the balcony of the Assembly, and we had really quite a lot of commotion on the floor because a lot of disabled advocates were there, really trying to barge into the chamber and storm the chamber. So it was, truthfully, it was an unfortunate event, I think, because the kids were there really for their moment of glory as we passed this bill. Whether yogurt needs to be the state snack or not, quite frankly.
How'd you vote?
I voted yes.
Okay.
I mean, to me, it's like, whatever.
Why not?
But I mean, what are you going to
I bet
do?
you Cliff Crouch voted in favor of it
I'm
because
sure.
Chobani's in his district.
Yes, yeah, but why, it could have been popcorn, it could have been bagels, it could have been pretzels, whatever. But I mean, to me, it's really, do we really need to do too much of this stuff? I don't think we do. But it was an interesting thing because the poor kids were up there trying to watch this and sort of enjoy their moment, and we had all this stuff going on.
But isn't that good for the kids to see this commotion, to see how government actually operates?
I think that the commotion with us debating a bill is democracy in action.
One word or two in action.
In
action,
space,
2 words.
action.
Okay.
Could be both. Sometimes it's in action. But what was going on there that day was not democracy. It was anarchy
but it
in a way.
shows how the people have a voice.
They have a voice, but you also have to have a little bit of decorum, and they scared the heck out of a lot of the members. Janet Dupree was sitting right there with her back to the door, and all of a sudden, those doors are generally locked except for the two in the middle.
Right.
Well, somebody walked fairly close to the door on the inside that set the sensor off and the door unlocked. They grab the door, they throw it open, and you literally heard screaming, "Go, go, go." Now, given the fact of what's gone on with some attacks that have happened, and you're sitting with your back to a door and all of a sudden you hear go, 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 you don't have any idea what's going on. So I didn't think it was an appropriate
Poor
way to go.
Sergeant at Arms Wayne Jackson.
Wayne was pretty heated that day, and Wayne, he's cool as a cucumber, but he was a little bit heated that day and a little angry because Wayne, his job is to protect us inside that chamber, and he was not happy with what was going on.
Well, we're happy that you were here.
I'm thrilled.
And that you were able to spend the time and give us your unique take on the legislative session, because I haven't heard a lot of the stories that you brought up. I hadn't heard them before, so this is great.
All right, so we give you a report card. You get an A.
All
I don't know if
right.
the whole assembly gets an A, but you get an A for being a great assemblyman and
Thank you.
thinking for the people and doing the right things.
Your blessings must be working for him.
Yes.
There you go. Things are going well.
I
Only
appreciate
good
it.
things. Keep on rolling, like I always say, and especially with good health.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.